Great. So I want to give you a little background. This is a series that's developed as part of a year that Philadelphia Yearly Meeting and the Eco-Justice Collaborative and the Concord Quarter Climate Action Working Group has dedicated to stewardship. And the first part of the year, we were really focusing on environmental stewardship in the sense of our landscape. What would it look like to green our spaces, our sacred spaces, and really make a commitment to the other evil twin of the crises we're facing, which is the biodiversity loss. So we did 3 programs in the spring. One was specifically on ecological landscaping and an introduction from Doug Tallamy about why it's so urgent for us to do that. We heard from the National Wildlife Federation about their certification program, and we had a really super case study from Kendall Crosslands and the work they're doing on landscaping to be ecologically friendly. And then in April, we did a program that focused more on birds and bird gardening and the importance of transitioning our yards and our properties to bird-friendly landscapes, as well as learning more about the nuts and bolts of joining the Homegrown National Park System, which has been spearheaded by Professor Doug Tallamy. And then our third session was on carbon forests and forest restoration. We looked at 2 case studies, one from a Mexico cloud forest restoration work over 20 years, and one about a proposed 10-acre carbon forest that's looking for a home base. All of these links are live, so when you get this later, you can look at more information, and there were resources affiliated with all these programs, which we can share. I want to give this another context because the faith community really does matter in terms of biodiversity and in terms of climate. And essentially, all of us come with the belief that we have a moral obligation to do everything we can do to assure that future generations can thrive, along with the whole community of life. This isn't just about the human family. As well, we can look at what we own. We own schools, retirement communities, retreat centers, often housing developments, often a significant number of acres. I think it was estimated the Catholic Church alone owned millions of acres in the United States that we have a responsibility to steward differently. But also all of those facilities have buildings that are burning energy every day. And for the very first time, nonprofits are eligible for significant savings. All the rebates and programs that we've seen in the past that we all looked longingly at and wondered how can we ever benefit from are now available to us. So it seemed to us that both the urgency of the need to lower our emissions and the urgency to not miss this window of opportunity required that we share as concretely, as practically as possible materials, resources, programs that would benefit all of us. So we're going to have 4 programs. Today we're focusing on solar, which is I think really important and timely because there are deadlines we need to pay attention to. If you look down on the screen, our next one is on October 25th, and that's for everyone who has a commercial electric account. It's a number of specific things you can do to lower your costs and then use those funds to commit and dedicate to doing your own energy efficiency or solar work. Then in November, we're going to look at electrifying your HVAC system. All of us have aging systems, or many of us have aging systems, and we don't want to buy whatever's on the truck the day it fails. So we need to be very thoughtful about what the electrification process looks like. And again, there's new funding for nonprofits, which will make all the difference. And then finally, we're going to conclude in December with a conversation about the funding, financing, and options around EV charging, since that's a question many of us have about how many should we put in, how many can we afford, what kind should we put in. It's a changing market. So those are the areas we're going to cover over the next few months. And today, we are so lucky to have Liz Robinson, who is sort of like our local hero star around solar and energy efficiency and has been that for decades. I put her credentials up on the screen, but she's a member of Central Philadelphia Monthly Meeting. and she's currently the executive director of the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. And probably most historically and importantly, she was one of the founders of the Energy Coordinating Agency, if not the founder, which really turned around efficiency availability for low-income households in Philadelphia specifically, but broader too. Many of you will have heard of the Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance as well, which she was part of founding. And she's also directed the Energy Cooperative Association. So we are so lucky to have someone with so much expertise, enthusiasm, dedication, and knowledge. So I'm going to turn it over to her for the rest of the program. So thanks for being with us, Liz.
Thank you so much, Paula. Before we start on the presentation, I just want to say hello to everybody. Thanks so much for coming. And we're going to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'll dive right in. This is a project that the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association did for the state of Pennsylvania. And the toolkit is actually going to be released in the public domain any day now, as soon as the state publishes it. We're still waiting for that to occur. The reason that we designed the toolkit, to be frank, is because schools in Pennsylvania have been struggling, as everybody knows, with tight budgets. Many of our schools are not well funded, and schools across the Commonwealth have been struggling to find ways to make their budgets balance. And they've undertaken a lot of energy efficiency improvements, and many of them, a growing number of them, have undertaken solar. So what we're attempting to do with the toolkit is to put much more robust tools in people's hands so that they can go solar with confidence and make the right decisions. This is 2 different schools. And the one on the right, I'm just going to tell you a tiny story about. This one is in north of Harrisburg in Steelton High Spire. Steelton was the nation's first dedicated steel mill, right along the Susquehanna River, upside, just north of Harrisburg. So it's very, very old steel town. It's literally named Steelton. Hurricane Agnes back in the 70s flooded the Susquehanna River, and the school, this area, became a landfill. So just this huge tract of land behind the school became the landfill for all of the buildings that had to be demolished. So after 20 years, I guess, this is considered a settled landfill, and the school could install solar on top of this land. And frankly, it's not possible for the school to do anything else with the land. So it's a perfect use of land that was kind of a liability for the school. Now they've turned it into an asset. This is a 1.3 megawatt system, and this, together with another smaller system, provide 100% of the school district's load. They are saving $13,000 every year. They have a power purchase agreement, and in year 8, the system will become theirs. In other words, it reverts, the ownership changes, and it reverts to the school. And at that point, the school will be saving $200,000 a year. So it's a very tangible savings for the school. This is a rooftop system, much more typical of school, much smaller system, and I think will become much more typical on flat roofs. Many schools and nonprofit buildings are flat roofs. And of course, this white coating is perfect for solar for many reasons. But let's dive in to this is the really big story. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is now a year and a half old, as you all know, is a game changer. And it's really the impetus for this toolkit. The Inflation Reduction Act increases the tax credit to 30%. This is for both residential and commercial buildings, and extends the tax credit out for 10 years. So the tax credit is alive and well for until 2032. So the minimum, I'll call it the baseline, is 30%. And that is if the project is smaller than a megawatt, or if the project is larger than a megawatt and meets prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. The ITC, investment tax credit, ITC, now includes battery storage. There is also a set of adders. There is a 10% adder for domestic content. If your system meets that set of requirements, you get 40% instead of 30%. If you happen to be, if your school is located in, or your nonprofit, sorry, is located in what is called an energy community, that is a community near a brownfield, near a closed coal mine or coal power plant. It's an area with a fossil fuel history. And frankly, it covers 2/3 of Pennsylvania. So energy communities, you just need to be located there, and you qualify for an additional 10%. So you could be 30% baseline, 10% domestic content, plus 10% energy community. So you're up to 50%. There is also a 10% adder for location in a low-income census tract. This is competitive. It's also time limited. So what you've got here is only 2 years. There's only a 2-year window, and each year of the 2-year window, there will be very fierce competition. And I believe that competition is going to open up in late November or early December. So if you have a project design that is pretty firm, you are in good position to enter that competition if you're located in a low-income census tract. And so, for example, basically all of Norristown, almost all of Philadelphia, many parts of Lansdowne. There are many, many parts of Pennsylvania southeastern Pennsylvania that qualify for low-income census tract. And the IRS has issued clear guidance on all of these adders, and all of this guidance is in the toolkit. Tax-exempt entities, and this includes schools, nonprofit corporations, and municipal buildings, in other words, local government buildings, are all included in this category of tax-exempt entity. In the past, you had to pay a tax, you had to have a tax obligation in order to qualify for the tax credit. That's no longer the case. The IRA provides the same funding, the same level of the investment tax credit to you in the form of a refund. So the way this works, it's called an elective payment, and you will, I'll go into the detail in a bit, but it will come to the nonprofit entity in the form of a check. So it will be a grant, essentially. It will come in the form of a check. So this is a game changer for nonprofits. It completely changes the economics and makes solar a very compelling investment. So what are the advantages of going solar? Of course, energy bill savings, you offset your electricity consumption. You can also reduce peak. Reducing peak for a commercial account is a big deal, but estimating peak reduction is difficult to do. So that has to really be done by an expert. If you are trying to estimate your savings from your peak reduction, you'll need to really consult an expert to do that. Another revenue stream is solar renewable energy credits, or SRECs. Solar renewable energy credits are an ongoing revenue stream. For every megawatt hour that you produce, your system produces, you will earn one SREC. And right now, SRECs have fallen in value in Pennsylvania. They used to be trading at about $34, and now they're trading at about $28. So the price fluctuates, and we're expecting that price, well, not to go into a lot of detail here, but it can be a very significant revenue stream for a large organization or large system. Solar improves resilience, and as everyone knows, with climate change bearing down on us, resilience is increasingly important. Power outages are increasing. The frequency and duration of power outages is increasing everywhere. And solar, particularly with battery storage, can provide the backup that many nonprofits and certainly schools really need. And we're seeing schools increasingly become emergency facilities to the community in time of power outages and other related emergencies. So if your school or your nonprofit is in that position, or frankly, your local government building is in that position that you need an emergency facility, solar and storage is the best combination there. Of course, meets our environmental goals of reducing CO2 emissions, and that helps us meet all of our goals at local, state, and national levels. A really big factor for nonprofits is stability of the cost. Because solar has no fuel cost, its operating cost is flat, basically, and your energy costs are very, very stable. That's huge, particularly if you work on a narrow margin. If your budget is tight and you're working on a narrow margin, having that stability in that big cost category of energy is a very big plus. We just saw across Pennsylvania this year electricity rate hikes in every utility area. I think PECO was about 11.5%. PP&L was almost 24%. That's a big jump. That's a big unpleasant surprise for a nonprofit in budgeting. So the stability of the cost is a very nice thing. And then finally, particularly for schools, solar on site can create a lot of educational opportunities for students and staff. You can easily bring into the classroom the solar production data. So that data can be available to you through a Wi-Fi connection, and your daily, sometimes even hourly production is something that you can see in real time. And if you're in a classroom, a STEM classroom, looking at that and understanding how much money are we saving, how much, how many tons of CO2 are we avoiding? All of those metrics are very, very accessible through the monitoring of the solar system. These alpaca right here are, this is a school in central Pennsylvania, and they have a very strong agriculture program at the school. So they are using actually sheep and alpaca to mow the area underneath these panels. And that turns out to be the most advantageous way to maintain the grass and any other stuff you've got here. These animals happen to belong to a local farmer, and he's bringing them in for the school. And he has a strong relationship with the school and the ag program. But children can learn a tremendous amount through, in different ways through the maintenance and monitoring of solar systems. The toolkit is divided into 10 steps, and the 10 steps start with building a team. Your team can include a lot of different kinds of people, but I would encourage you, if possible, to include your facility manager and your chief finance officer, if possible. At least, have them come in as needed. And you will certainly need champions, people who are committed to getting this project done. You don't have to have consultants on your team. You don't have to have students or clients or constituents on your team, but that's always, up to you, but it, can be very helpful. The second step is to really get a handle on your energy use, your current use. This bill is a commercial PICO bill. It's very simple for a small entity. Your bill could be quite a bit more complex. So this is just included here as an example, but your facility manager should have a really good handle on your electric bills. If you are a small nonprofit, you may just be doing this work yourself, and your CFO, your top finance person, may be paying these bills every month. And if you're a really small nonprofit, you may not understand your electric bill. So if you need help at this stage, that's something to think about. But you need to get a handle on your electricity usage. We recommend highly in the toolkit that you start with energy efficiency, that you benchmark your building. Benchmarking your building and your campus is critically important. It's free. The EPA's tool, Portfolio Manager, is the best tool out there for my money, and it's completely free. It's amazing. It's a fantastic tool. So if you're not already benchmarking, you can do that immediately, and you'll be surprised how much money you'll save. Also think about your future electricity load. Consider that you're going to be, if you're a school, your buses are going to be switching over to electric buses. And if you've not already done that, you're going to be electrifying the school buses. If you're a nonprofit corporation and you have a fleet of vehicles, you're going to be electrifying that fleet in very short order. That process of electrification is going to add to your load. So if you're thinking about a solar system and you want it to support 100% of your load, think about not only what is your load today, but what is my load going to be in 2 or 3 years? What is that going to look like? Am I going to electrify every end use in my building? Am I going to switch out the heating system, the hot water system? Many nonprofit corporations have very old and inefficient heating equipment. So this process of thinking through and planning, what is that evolution going to look like? How do I move down that decarbonization path? There are a lot of ways to assess the potential of your solar potential, really. And you can, of course, install both ground-mounted systems and rooftop systems. So you have to figure out what is the best, what's the optimal location. And something I'm going to mention here, it's not on this slide, but I'll mention it here because it's not well known. In Pennsylvania, we have a tariff called virtual meter aggregation. Virtual meter aggregation simply allows you to put solar on the sunniest of your spots, your best, your optimal facility, your optimal location, and you will get credit for the excess power that it generates at any other location, any other meter, provided that all the meters are in the same name and all these locations are within a 2-mile radius. So what that means is, let's say you're a church. Let's say you have a retirement facility. You've got a campus of, I'm just making this up, you've got 9 buildings. You've got too many trees over on your main building. You don't want to put it there. And your roof line is not optimal. You've got too many, small roofs connecting, not an optimal situation. But you've got a beautiful building over here that's got this massive flat roof, no trees, pure sun all day, every day. That's where you should put your system. Put your system in the optimal location. And if it supplies more than that building needs, you get credit for all the excess power at any other building, at any or several other buildings. So it's called a waterfall, and that excess comes down to the other buildings so that you get full net metering credit for all of your solar generation. All right, this doesn't look like it, but this is the most important spot in this, this process. You need to decide your ownership model, and there are two basic ownership models. You can own it yourself, that's direct ownership. The nice thing about that is you get all the benefits, but you also have all the responsibility. So you have to arrange for financing yourself, you have to select the solar installer, and you have to maintain the system. If you don't want to do direct ownership, you can go to third-party ownership. That's usually called a power purchase agreement or a PPA or lease. PPA is just really a form of a lease. And in a PPA situation, you will eventually own the system, but you don't own it right away. The power purchase agreement provider, the PPA provider, will make the decision about the solar installer. They will handle the financing, and they're going to give you a discount on your electric bill. So they're going to give you specific terms for your payment, your monthly payment. This is the most important thing I will really stress. You must ensure in a PPA agreement that you're going to save money. So there is no reason for you not to save money. So the PPA agreement must be written, the contract must be written in a way to guarantee savings from day one. So that's my message to anybody who's considering a PPA. Just make sure that you're building in savings from day one. The toolkit has two pro formas. A pro forma is simply a spreadsheet that works through all of the variables. It considers all of the variables that you need. It's a tool that's used by everybody starting a business, everybody operating a business, everyone expanding, any kind of nonprofit or any business investment that you're considering. You would use a pro forma to help you work through those variables that you have to consider. One pro forma is to support direct ownership, and the other one is for the PPA. And we have the wonderful advantage here of PCI is working with Bryn Mawr College this semester, and we have some very smart math majors who are available as volunteers to assist any nonprofit who is interested in running these scenarios. If you need assistance in running these pro formas, we can make that happen for you. We can put you in touch with these students who can help you. So keep that in mind, and just contact me afterward to let me know. So you want to evaluate the financial benefits of solar to your organization in making this decision about which form of ownership. And you're going to add all these things up. Now, all of these are in the pro formas, so you don't have to, the values that are assigned to each of these are in the pro formas are going to really help you with this process. The next step is secure financing. If you're going for direct ownership, you want to start with your cash on hand. That's the best money to use. And then the grants. And I put the ITC in the category of a grant. So again, the ITC, the investment tax credit, is a baseline 30% plus the adders. Utility rebates, it turns out that three of our three largest utilities, electric utilities in Pennsylvania, are now providing rebates to any commercial customer who goes solar. The rebate in the PECO territory is 10 cents per kilowatt hour for the first year of all the solar generation. So all solar generation, PECO will give you 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And this is on top of full net metering. So full net metering means you're getting full retail value for your solar. So it's retail in, retail out. So you're getting full retail value for all solar production. In addition to that, PECO is going to give you for 1 year 10 cents per kilowatt hour for every solar kilowatt hour that you generate. There are also federal grants available. Renew America is from DOE. They have a category of school grants and nonprofit grants. We do expect that Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, is going to be releasing financing, very favorable financing, and possibly grants for some categories of nonprofits. We don't know yet. This is federal money from the IRA that's now flowing, beginning to flow into the state. So we don't have the detail yet on that. So public finance, this is a lot more of that. Green banks, the Philadelphia Energy Authority and the Pennsylvania Economic Development Authority, PETA, are both green banks already in the state. They are receiving a lot of additional federal money as we speak, and they will be in the next year really sorting out exactly how they're going to use that. But there will be very favorable terms for solar statewide, particularly schools and nonprofit corporations. There is also a network of Pennsylvania Sustainable Energy Funds. Those facilities will also have some role in all of this dissemination of public finance. And then, of course, there's private finance available. So there's a lot of funding available for solar. And I want to just dive into a tiny bit of detail here with the 30% base credit. Again, there are two threshold requirements. If your capacity is smaller than a megawatt, there's no additional requirement. If it's bigger than a megawatt, you must satisfy both prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. A prevailing wage is not an issue for schools. Schools are already required to follow prevailing wage, so that's already baked in. The apprenticeship is new, and that's key. If you fail to follow, this is something I really want to highlight here. If you fail to follow the prevailing wage or the apprenticeship, you don't get 30%. You will only get 6%. So that is really important to keep in mind. Those requirements are key. Now, this second one is something that applies to some categories, schools and municipal buildings particularly, not so much other nonprofits, but so the situation here is that if you're using tax-exempt financing, for example, a bond, the ITC, the 30% ITC, is reduced to either 15%, that's the smallest number it can be, that's the floor. It's reduced either to 15% or the percentage that was financed by the tax-exempt financing. So in other words, if your project only financed 5% of its total value, its total cost, with tax-exempt financing, it would be 30 minus 5. So it would be 25%. So the smallest number is 15, but it's just important for people to know that. This was in the fine print of the IRS guidance, and it's something you might miss otherwise. So the process to apply, if you are a nonprofit corporation, you're going to apply for the elective pay ITC. You have to first submit a pre-filing application, and you do that online through the IRS portal. The application requires specific information about the nonprofit and the project. So you have to have some details about your project worked through before you apply the pre-filing application. That's the first step. The second step is the IRS takes a look at that and they give you a registration number for each project. So let's say you have 2 projects you're going to do. Your campus is going to do 2 projects. To independent solar projects. Each of those is assigned a registration number. The next step is you complete your project, it goes into service, and then you file your tax return. As you're filing the tax return, usually this is along with a 990. As you're filing that, you're filing for this refund. And the IRS is going to treat the elective payment as if you had paid taxes. In other words, you're going to be getting a refund, but you didn't actually pay anything, but you're getting a refund. So it's the process that they're using is as if you paid. So it'll come after you file in the form of a check to you. And then they process the check. And this link is to the IRS guidance. So as soon as you receive the slides, you'll be able to go and see all of that detail. These links are very helpful, and they're all contained in the toolkit, but I put them in the slides because it's important for people to be thinking about this ahead of time. This is just a little bit of information about the Renew America Schools grant from DOE. This is a 5-year program. We're now in year 2. And I believe that the funding is going to be released pretty soon, or the competition is going to open pretty soon. So they provide $100 million each year over 5 years. The Renew America's nonprofits is principally for energy efficiency, and it is, like all this money, it is governed by the Justice 40 requirements. So that's another really important source of funding for nonprofits broadly. I included these because the way to get access to, there is free technical assistance available from the Department of Energy. It's from LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, but you need to join the Efficient and Healthy Schools campaign in order to get access to that. So that's why I included those here. The 7th step, once you've figured out exactly what you're going to do, you issue a request for proposal in order to select a qualified solar installer. We recommend that you think about issuing it for both direct ownership and a PPA, just to see what comes back to you. And in the toolkit is a sample RFP that you can modify. It's in Word. You can just modify that, or you could use a different one. But it is provided in the toolkit. And then you select your installer, issue a contract. You'll oversee construction and installation. And in most cases, the installers really are very sensitive to schools and government buildings, and they will work with you around your schedule. So in the case of schools, they generally tend to do this installation in the summertime when school is out, so that there's minimal disruption. But they're very, very sensitive to working around your schedule. And I didn't hear any complaints from any of the schools that we talked with about the installation process. So this worked out, very, very smoothly. And then the last step really is to monitor your performance and maintenance. And I strongly recommend that you get this kind of display. This is a very typical display from a screen that you monitor that links you to your own production. So you will see, data like this coming back to you, but having this simple display in your lobby, if you're a school, in having it available to every classroom, it's really invaluable. And having your own constituents, your students, your staff, aware of and paying attention to the solar system is a good way to monitor it, because you can have, schools, it's invaluable. You'll just learn so much information in a school, but you can have unusual, anomalous events. And someone, could catch those for you. Sorry about that. So you will have to replace your inverter after about 10 years, 10 to 12 years, could be earlier, but that's something just to be aware of. But other than that, the system will work pretty much without maintenance for 20, 25 years. Almost, there's almost no maintenance really required. Okay, we're going to open it up to questions at this point. And the way we're going to handle questions is please just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And you can unmute yourself since we're not a large group. Oh, come on. Somebody's got a question. There we go. Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for doing this.
Sure.
So, yeah, we have an existing solar array, as you well know, but
Yes.
it's coming up on the end of its useful life. You talked about issuing an RFP. And so if it were direct ownership, we'd do that to installers. Who would we send an RFP to for third party? I assume we'd need some kind of-
There are very good PPA providers in Pennsylvania. Because this toolkit is developed for the state of Pennsylvania, they have a very hard rule, a policy of not putting together a list of qualified anybody. So there is no list of qualified contractors or PPA providers, but you could contact me independently and I can give you a short list of qualified PPA providers. What I will say is that in doing this research, we discovered one PPA provider who's no longer in business, who I would never recommend because the school that they worked with did not save money. They installed a system about 5 years ago, and they put the wrong amount in the contract, and they didn't build in these savings. So, and that company was sold to another company. And anyway, I would never recommend them. So, but there are some very highly reputable PPA providers in Pennsylvania that I can recommend. Bill Cousins.
Thank you, Liz. Quick question. The pro forma that you mentioned for the direct purchase, does it include a net present value calculation? Because it seems to me that's one of the most convincing arguments you can make to show that over the life of the system, even discounting everything back to current dollars, that it's a good deal financially.
Yes, it does. It does include net present value. Yeah,
Great.
these systems will be saving money for nonprofits, from the beginning. And I'll just speak from a residential system. I installed a system on a property that we own about 5 years ago, and I estimate, and we got the 30% tax credit, and I estimate that the system pays for itself in less than 9 years. And I believe that I'll have 15 years after that of free electricity. So just to give you a sense. Now, commercial rates are entirely different, and the payback will be entirely different for school. But because there's so much free money around now, it's very compelling. Chuck Marshall.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our solar system on our church in Wayne was installed in 2008, and we have not had to do anything with the inverters, so they've lasted 15 years.
Wow.
I hope I'll know when the inverters break down or whatever.
Are you monitoring your production?
Yeah, because we send our solar production to our SREC broker every month. We record at the end of the month, and we monitor. We correlate that against degree days, and to see
great.
if the panels are still operating efficiently.
Oh, that's great. Good for you.
But what I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned the backup storage battery.
Yes.
Is there something within the IRA that enhances the attractiveness of using backup storage batteries?
The ITC, so the full value of the ITC, whatever you end up qualifying for, whether it's 30%, 40%, or 50%, whatever it is, that is applicable to batteries also.
Okay, I get
It's
it.
also applicable to your interconnection fee. So many commercial buildings have the utility can assess an additional interconnection fee sometimes. So the entire cost of the installation, everything is qualifies, I'm sorry, qualifies for the ITC.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
that makes the batteries, and batteries are a lot less expensive than they used to be. And they are improving all the time, just like solar. So it is, it's a better investment now than it was 7 or 8 years ago, or whenever.
thank you.
Sure. Baker Anderson.
Yes, thank you very much. Great info so far, so thanks. And you've sort of answered this partly, but and I know it's difficult to be precise, but for the payback period, considering, potentially up to a 60% credit, what would that look like for a school rather than a residence? Is there any number you could throw out?
Oh, I could not. I'm sorry. I couldn't give you it really depends, as you know. It depends on a lot of different variables. But I will say that I can confidently say that any commercial building that goes solar now and doesn't make a mistake in your decision-making process, you will save money from day one. So it will be a very sound investment for the institution. There are ways that you could make mistakes, so it's possible not to save. But if you the biggest trap, I think, is this PPA. And if you are negotiating with someone who is not really an honest provider, you could end up agreeing to a cost of electricity that is too high. And so you need to know enough. That's the whole purpose of the toolkit, is to help you understand the variables so that you know enough to ask all the hard questions, all the right questions when you're negotiating. And frankly, if you need a consultant to help you at that stage with this RFP and the negotiation, that's something that you could consider making part of your process, is hiring a consultant. There's also the Pennsylvania Solar Center, which is another nonprofit based in the western part of the state, has a program called Get Solar Communities, and they are offering like steeply discounted technical assistance, and they can provide that kind of consultancy to help negotiate, to make sure that you save money. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay, cool, thanks. And to add on to that, it's sort of in a different direction, but when you say for example, you say a 1.3 megawatt system, what exactly does that mean? Is that like the peak power that it's instantaneously producing under ideal conditions?
That's the capacity of the system. That's not kilowatt hours, that's kilowatts. So it is the size. It's the size of the system. So to give you, a megawatt is 1,000 watts. To give you an example, the system that I have on my little house, my little row house, is 5 kW. So it's minuscule compared to a 1.3 megawatt system, which is really huge. This system that we're looking at in this image is probably 500 kW. So just to give you a sense.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a school, say in central PA is not even going to come close to that 1.3 megawatt.
Yeah, you
mean,
want to size the system to ideally, this is your decision, everyone's different, but generally speaking, if you can size the system to support 100% of your load, that is going to give you a very good return.
okay.
Bert,
Okay.
Dallas?
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Liz. This is a great webinar.
Sure.
I first brought this information to our finance clerk at the meeting, and they were saying that our 990 is filed through Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. And I was wondering, who is it at Philadelphia Yearly Meeting that we would work through, and are they prepared for these kind of things? Have they done this?
I'm going to look at Bill Cousins. Bill, have you thought about this? Because I know you're thinking about this or Chuck, Marshall, is that something you might be able to answer?
I'll offer a comment. Our meeting house actually is sub-metered under Germantown Friends School. And Germantown Friends School has its own, it files its own 990.
Ah,
So if we were doing this as a meeting, we would really only be doing it in conjunction with the school. And we would be using the schools, whatever we filed would be part of the project that was being done by Germantown Friends School. So in our case, the school would be the one filing the 990 with the IRS.
thanks. So I'll turn to Paula. Paula, could you help with that answer?
No, I can't. I think that means we should look into this. We should
Yep.
confirm.
Liz, if I may.
Philadelphia.
Yes, thank Chris.
So a monthly meeting is a religious congregation, does not file a 990. So monthly meetings will need to find a different way to file for the ITC. School committees, if they're under the meeting, might be in the same boat. A school board for a separately incorporated school should be filing a 990, I would think, but may also qualify as a church. But yeah,
So
advice is needed.
So every church does not file a 990. Is that right, Chris?
Right.
Regardless of denomination.
PYM does not file a 990.
Okay, so
Oh.
a dear friend of mine, Roger Clark, helped with his church, and I'll ask Roger how he, because they installed a solar system a couple of years ago, and I'm sure they applied for the tax credit. So I'll find out from him, and we'll. This is really important. This kind of question is actually very, very helpful to us. We are trying to, really expand and extend the information so that we're giving people, hard facts. So anything you've got like that, we will share not only with whoever asked the question, but with everybody. So thanks, Bert, for that.
Well, thank
I'll
you,
also
Liz, and I
mention,
will actively be looking into it also.
Okay, great.
Liz, let me mention also that the Germantown Jewish Center is pursuing a solar project right now
Oh, good.
and anticipates using the investment tax credit. Now, the Germantown Jewish Center, there's both a synagogue there, so they might also have this 990 exemption, but they're also a broader educational institution. So I don't have a name there, but could probably get one that you could talk to investigate how they're doing it.
Okay, great. Crisco, Hewitt.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Then I'm very interested in this point of a meeting for worship getting the ITC. I thought I had understood that we would go to the IRS website and get guided through that. But now from the questions and the answers, you're not particularly sure how you can do it without a 990.
No. What I'm not sure about. So I do know absolutely that you will qualify.
I'm
So-
not concerned about that.
Yeah.
It's how.
So I just don't know. So in the IRS guidance, it says usually a 990. So that's in parentheses in their guidance. So they anticipate this fact that not everybody files a 990. So it's just that I don't know exactly the paperwork. So we will find out what that paperwork is, and we'll share that with everyone on this webinar. So it's just a matter of, if it's not a 990, what is it? So it's something else.
Thank you very much. I look
Sure.
forward to getting that information.
Sure. Are there any other final questions? It's exactly 4:30. Amazing. That is a miracle.
It
Any
would-
other final questions?
It's not a question, but it's a speculation that maybe for churches or places of worship that they would ask, the IRS would ask for a letter of determination or something like that. A copy
Yeah,
of
they're
your
probably
letter.
going to ask for more than that. So it may be that they have another form that they're going to give you in lieu of the 990. So it's going to ask you some financial information.
Mhm.
So they probably have another form. I just don't happen to know what that number is. Paula?
Can you say a little bit about the deadlines and the rolling out? You've mentioned both the federal level and the state level. It sounded like the state's not yet ready, announced what will be available for nonprofits and schools.
What I would say, yeah, what I would say is the state of Pennsylvania is going to be receiving funding through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and they've also applied for Solar for All. And those funds will be coming into the state shortly. They'll be coming in roughly at the end of this calendar year. The state is developing a plan for what to do with those monies right now. I'm not privy to that plan. I don't know exactly what it entails. And they haven't decided yet either. So it's going to be a process of, I would say, 6 months to 9 months from now before the dust settles at the state level and we know exactly what's going to be released. Don't wait for that. Do not wait for that. The planning process to go solar, if it's any commercial building, any institution, takes a while. So go ahead and get started on your planning and plug in the financing information in the process of your final determination of how you're going to pay for it. But don't wait. Go ahead and get started and become more familiar with all of these steps.
I want to just respond to that by saying that I think everyone who's even thinking about the possibility, this is the time to do it. And that I just want to reiterate, don't wait, because we don't know in any given program what the window will be for submissions. So if you've done the work ahead of time, then you'll be poised, especially if it's a competitive situation, you'll be poised to submit. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I really hope anyone here with us today will share this information with other schools, houses of worship, retirement community people, because it's only through word of mouth. Many people aren't aware of this. It feels too complex. You're all running businesses, schools, retirement communities, everybody's very busy, but this probably is the moment in our history where you should assign someone to following this, to maybe even hiring someone short-term to help you with the paperwork, or a consultant at that critical moment. We've had webinars with University of Pennsylvania, which did a gigantic PPA and spoke with their attorneys, as well as the people who manage the grant process and the funding. So I think it's important, and any of us should look carefully, speak with our boards, speak with our facilities people, look at whether or not we've done the energy efficiency work we need to do as well, so that you're doing an accurate solar estimate when you do that work. But don't delay. I guess I just want to amplify that. This is important to think through and do. And then finally, we have a few people from out of state, and we have other people in our yearly meeting who are not in Pennsylvania. So I'm wondering if there's a national resource that you should direct us to. Is it just the IRS? Should each of us be looking at the Department of Energy website? If there are any suggestions you have for people who aren't in PA, for whom this particular toolkit is the appropriate
Y-
source.
Yeah, if you're not in Pennsylvania, to be frank, the toolkit, 99% of it is useful to you wherever you are. So most of the information is not specific to Pennsylvania. So it's going to be, very helpful to you everywhere. But every state is receiving IRA funding, and your state energy office, whether it's called an energy office or sometimes this money flows through the economic development office, that department is key. And you should be looking at their website and figuring out, where those grants are, where those loans are. So Delaware, frankly, Delaware and Maryland are already part of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. They both have very strong energy departments. So both of those states, you are very well positioned and are already running much better solar programs than Pennsylvania is. So, other states around us tend to be ahead of us. We have our feet in our coal history.
Mhm. Also mentioned, Liz, you lifted up this question of reducing peak demand, and I want to say that George, who's on the call with us today, George Alexander, is going to be offering a workshop related to that and to commercial accounts in particular, and that's going to be on October 25th. This month we have two. In November and December, there's just one workshop, again at 3:30 to 4:45, and you do need to register for each program separately. We'll be sure you get those links when we send out the slides, as well as the link to the recording for those of you who'd like to share this with other members of your meeting or your boards or your finance officer who wasn't able to come today, so that you'll have all those resources. But we hope you'll join us again, both for the one on peak demand, reducing the peak demand costs, and then the next one on our heating systems, which is really about efficiency. And then the last one about making decisions about having EV chargers available for visitors, staff, residents, etc.
Great.
Are there any other last minute questions before we thank Liz?
Well, and the toolkit, will that get sent out when it's published or?
Yes. We will send that out. It'll be available through the DEP website, and it will also be available on PCA's website. But I'll send it out as soon as the state lets me do so.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to you coming back, and I know Liz is giving you her email. I hope you'll take advantage of it if you have concrete questions as you move forward. Thank you so much.
Good luck. Go solar.